I think it was about March 1979, and I went down to London to buy one. They had one advertised in this, Melody Maker or whatever the English paper was at the time, and it was called EFR guitars. I asked what was EFR stand for, and they said extremely fucking rare. And so I'm 19, and I go down to London, and the guitar is as advertised, and I'd phoned them up and said, "You still got it?" A white Gibson Flying V, 1979, brand new, and it's £495 in 1979, and but it was the only one I could find. There wasn't one in Birmingham, so I went down to London and I put the money in my sock because I thought maybe somebody'd mug me. I thought I haven't been to London very often, and I pictured myself going around London on my own trying to find this shop, and somebody, this is a stick up, So I'd got the £495 rolled up in my sock, and went to the shop. I had a go on the guitar, and at first I thought it's a bit strange because, of course, it sits a bit. You don't know whether to put it there, but I thought, it'll be all right. I'll get used to it, and get handed over the cash, and come back on the train. And again on the train, I kept thinking, what about if somebody nicks it? What about if I fall asleep and when I wake up, the guitar's gone? So I don't know. Maybe I was just a bag of nerves. And anyway, I got it home safely to Stourbridge. And it became my thing, I mean, it's a very good-looking guitar, and it does a lot of work on stage. I think it looks great. And in most photographs, I think the V would really stand out. And a white Flying V, is pretty special. I was probably the only guy in the Midlands who had a white Flying V. But, I must add that the only reason I bought a Flying V is because of Michael Schenker. Because, of course, I'd been to see UFO on the Obsession tour in Birmingham Town Hall, and Michael Schenker walks on with blonde hair, a black skin-tight, outfit, and a white Flying V, and just looked amazing. And of course, what a player! I'd been a fan of UFO and some of his guitar solos and things like Lights Out and This Kid's, and on Obsession things like You Don't Fool Me. So I would, try and cop some of Michael Schenker's licks, but he had such a touch and such a way of playing. It was way beyond blues. He'd kind of found some new way of playing, like a mode or something, that I just loved his sound. And I think Michael Schenker is one of the greatest rock guitarists of all time. So, of course, I wanted to be a bit like that and emulate and look cool. So that's the main reason I chose the Flying V, Michael Schenker. Yeah, I think Richie Blackmore was number one. One of the main reasons I started playing the guitar was Richie Blackmore. My older brother, I've got a brother who's 6 years older than me, and he played guitar in a band. Only a local band, covers, but that rubbed off on me because I could watch him practice and I could go and watch his band rehearse. And you get into the gear, you get into the amplifiers and the strings and all that kind of thing. I'm probably like 13, 14, and he would take me to see bands, and it rubbed off on me. I went to see Black Sabbath when I was 14, thanks to my brother at Birmingham Odeon on the Bloody Sabbath tour. And, so with Oz, and, it's a big effect on a 14-year-old teenage boy. So my brother would let me play his guitar, and then at one point my brother bought a Gibson SG, so he let me have his old guitar, which was only a cheap kind of homemade type thing that he'd bought for, I think, £14. And I started on that, started learning how to play that. And then I'd see Richie Blackmore, and I bought, the second album I ever bought was Machine Head. So I wanted to play the solo in Highway Star, and who doesn't? It's a wonderful guitar solo. So I had a go, I couldn't do it, but I still can't do it. But that's one of the reasons. I think there came a point when I got serious about it. I'd probably been sort of thinking about, what you're going to do when you leave school and what do you want to be. And then there must have come a sort of eureka moment where I thought, oh, I'm going to be the guitarist. I'm going to learn to play the guitar properly. And like a lot of kids, you become obsessed. So you put the hours in, you start doing the practicing. Instead of going out on your bike or messing around with your friends, I'm going to stop in and I'm going to practice. What are you doing tonight? I'm practicing, And of course I formed a band, Diamond Head. It's the only band I had before, there wasn't a band before Diamond Head. I just formed Diamond Head, and away we go. But Blackmore, and then Jimmy Page, because I'm a huge Zeppelin fan. Zeppelin are my favourite band, so I love Jimmy Page, and I loved Van Halen when he came out. Let me think. Paul Kossoff, lovely player, lovely touch, vibrato, and of course we've touched on Schenker already. Yeah. And then, a bit later on, you still great players appear, like Eric Johnson is marvellous. And even today, I like Joe Bonamassa. I think he's seemed to have blended so many great styles into his style. Yeah. He must have put a lot of work in, incredible amount of technique. It just looks great, I think. There is something about the sound. It does sound different to a Les Paul or an SG. Yeah, it's a bit more middly. There's a slight nasal quality to it, which I think will help it cut in a band or on solos. I do find it weird to practice, as I said earlier, because it can slip that way, or you have to sit a little bit uncomfortable. It can give you backache, I think, if you try and practice the V for too long. So I practice on. I've moved over to a Les Paul mainly. My Flying V broke several times because I can remember there was a time I didn't have a stand for it, so I would just stand it up against the wall or a cab, and it would slip. And of course, it hit the neck would hit the floor and crack at the top of the neck by the nut. So I had to have it repaired a few times, and I started to think it's quite fragile. And I moved on to Les Paul because it was such a piece of wood. You could drop that, and it can go on a plane, and at the end when it comes off the baggage collection, that it's still going to be in one piece. Where I started to think the Flying V might come out in 5 pieces, and I started worrying about it. But, I used it all. Our first album, Lightning to the Nations, that we released in 1980, the whole album was done with just the Flying V.
That was the first album?
That was our first album, and every track was done with the Flying V. And all the double tracks as well, I'd record like a guide guitar with the drums and bass. And then sometimes we'd keep that because it would have a performance. And then I'd redo like a second track, and you pan it stereo. And of course that was amazing to me back in 1980. But I would just use the Flying V on both channels, and that's what I liked, and that's probably much all I had. It's not like I had 6 guitars to pick from or something. But it does have a unique sound, and I used it on our second album, Borrowed Time, as well. And just eventually, I probably went over to the Les Paul because it's got a little bit more something. The standard, especially, there's a mid quality that I like about it. Whereas I think customs are a little more bassy. Yeah, I started with a Marshall. I'd have I think it was the Master Volume. It probably came out about 85, 75. So I had one of them with the preamp. That was useful because, of course, you could play in your house, in your bedroom, with gain. You needed the gain, because, of course, years ago you'd have to turn an amp right up to get distortion, or have a fuzz box. And So when Marshall brought out the preamp, and it was very useful to me, and so I was happy with Marshall for a long, long time. And then we did an album where we used a Fender Showman that had been modified, and that was nice. I've used Laney, and I've used Engel for a long time now. I like the Engel. I've got a Screamer 50. And on the last time we used a diesel, a VH4, that was fabulous. So there's a few that work for me.
Yeah.
And I look for a middle in my sound. There's something about, the amp that I look for. I don't want a scoop sound, a Mesa Boogie Real dual rectifier sound. I don't really want a bassy sound. I want some ring. I want to be able to hear the notes in a chord and get a bit of a powerful sound without it being saturated. On my V, it's the standard pickups that I've always had. I don't know what they are. They're encased in a metal box, aren't they? Yeah. I did try replacing them with an EMG, but I didn't like it, and I went back to the original pickup because it just had more sound, more tone somehow. I think they're weaker, or the fact that the body's lighter than the Les Paul. It's a slightly weaker sounding signal, but if you turn your amp up a little bit, you can compensate. So if I go from a Les Paul to a Flying V, then all I've got to do is turn the amp up a tiny bit, and you're kind of back to where you were.
And then it compensates for...
Yeah, and if I put the Les Paul back on, a notch should do it.
Yeah, but that's...
Yes, there is, yeah. And the sound that the guitar made in the first place, what they like. But yeah, I've never gone down that route, and I know people who have. They've replaced all the pickups, the knobs, the machine heads, everything, and it is almost the quest for the perfect sound. And I don't know if it's if you're going to make it that much difference, it's probably incremental,
Yeah, I think so.
But you can become obsessed.
Yeah.
Like it's never quite happy.
You can...
I mean, it's a slightly weird shape, isn't it? And it just takes a bit of getting used to. You can, the neck's quite nice. It's not a fat neck or anything. And I did find it fairly easy to play. I had to jump from the Fender Strat to the Flying V, which was quite a big step. But the step between the Les Paul and the Flying V is not so much. They've got similarities. I've got so used to the Les Paul in the past, 10, 15 years. Yeah. I did try other guitar makes. I tried JD. I had 2 or 3 JDs. And there was another guy in Birmingham built me a custom guitar. But in the end, I didn't like them, and I sold them all. I've had a few Les Pauls and another Fender Strat again, which I sold. And I've still got the Flying V, of course. Yeah. That's I don't want to sell that. I don't want to get rid of it.
Do you use it?
It's actually my 4th guitar.
Your 4th?
Yeah, but it is an important guitar, and people want to see it. When we're in England, I'll play it live. People want to see it, and I'll play it. But I don't bring it abroad anymore. I don't want to put it on the plane because we'll have to put it in the hold, and
it's too risky, man.
It's fragile, and you might get lost.
Yeah,
we had a flight once where all our guitars went missing. And we were at the airport going, "Where's the guitars?" "We don't know. We'll find them." And we had to go home without the guitars. And then they turned up. The airport brought them to our houses. They took our addresses, and they found them eventually. They'd gone. I don't know where they'd gone, or they couldn't get them on the plane or something. So we got them back, but it's an anxious 24 hours thinking, I hope they haven't lost it.
I know.